Hi, I'm Rachel McLeod, and today we're going to be talking about nothing too bad happened in my childhood. And I hear this a lot, especially because people know that I work with all kinds of complex PTSD, and I do some pretty gnarly trauma work, overt. Clearly, this was trauma, and so other people will come to me with symptoms of complex PTSD, and they say this: nothing too bad happened in my childhood. So I don't know why I'm showing up with dissociation and anxiety or just numbness in my life. And so I wanted to talk about that because I recently just had like my 100th conversation about it. I was like, oh, I should make a live about this because this is a real thing. This People can still have complex PTSD and nothing too bad happen in their childhood. And in the beginning of my work, this would perplex me. And these were some of my most challenging cases. I remember one in particular, massive anxiety, and a relatively decent childhood. And so nothing too bad happened in their childhood. And it took a little bit of winding through this to figure out what was at the root of this. And this is commonly at the root of this. And I'm going to talk about this today because you don't have these symptoms for no reason. They are showing up for very specific reasons. We're going to talk about that. These people also usually fall through the cracks in the system because people say they don't fall into an overtly traumatized situation. So this didn't happen to them. This didn't happen to them. I'm not using the words because I don't want to trigger people. Just on the house, I'd like you to watch a video and not be triggered if you have one of these overt histories. And some of these things could also be repressed and suppressed, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I have videos about that. I'm really talking about these where these people who it all looks good on the surface. The childhood all looks good on the surface. And so, and they're confused, and people are confused about how to help them. And I don't want it to be like that. And I want you to know you still have a valid reason for seeking treatment. And a lot of them feel like I shouldn't really come to you and talk to you about this, Rachel, because, there's so many other people who have had it worse. No, I won't want anyone missing out on a vibrant, emotionally thriving, vibrant life. And you deserve to have that as well. And so this setup we're okay. I need to introduce myself properly. I want to just nerd out right now and go into it, but I'm Rachel McLeod. I specialize in helping people do the brain work for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, often rooted in complex PTSD. The brain has a beautiful process for resolving this. That process gets stopped and blocked. And so the symptoms keep building and people don't heal. And so we get that unblocked, and all of a sudden, the brain is doing all this beautiful healing work. We're going to see tons of growth. That's where we see the post traumatic growth process take place. The brains make this. And so this is a beautiful thing because if we can support the brain to do this work, it gets done. If you don't support the brain, it doesn't get done because brains require support to unblock this process. Once it gets blocked, the design, the actual anatomy of the brain, the human brain, needs support to get unblocked. And so that's what I specialize in. I really, that's what I do. But I help people who have these complex issues and really help them get that stuff, not just the brain process unblocked and stopped, get it up and running, and then help them build the things that they need to build now that they're out of survival mode. And so that includes emotional intelligence, that includes self-mastery, self-discovery, satisfaction, joy, all these fabulous things that happen the brain can then build once this process gets unblocked and unstopped. And so even though that nothing too bad happened in my childhood, this process is also blocked because there's some challenging things. Okay, now here we are. I'm going to dive in. Okay, at the root of this right here is usually dysfunction in the parent-child relationship because of a parent's mental illness, physical illness, addiction, things like this. But the parent usually is functional enough to do okay in society. That society isn't questioning the parent, right? They're not on the corner selling drugs, selling all, like they're not interacting with the jail system. They may be the parent may be just more on the couch, more going through the motions, more emotionally withdrawn, sometimes emotionally volatile, but less of that, more just vacant, more preoccupied, more a parent is more thinking about their illness, their stress, their childhood trauma, and the child is being raised with that parent. Okay, you might be this parent now because this is how generational patterns work, and I'm going to also talk about how to resolve this, and you can resolve this right now. I want you to resolve this now because yes, you are passing this on to your children. This is how it happens. This is what we're doing. And so when we have these disorders, we need to not just, and we have children, we are not just resolving it for ourselves. We get to also help our kids through this as well. These should just be brain colds, a little flu we got, but because this process gets blocked, it doesn't get processed and it doesn't heal, and it should be here and gone. But if we do resolve this, we're not only we're handing the issue, we've handed the issue off to our kids, but we're going to also hand off to our kids the immunity, the overcoming, the solution, and they'll resolve that for good. They really will not be attracted to that again once they're finished with it, just like you. Um, and so, what happens here when we are being raised by parents that are mentally ill? My kids' language is showing up. My kids are teenagers, and they're like, "Oh, this is so mid." It's not terrible, it's not awesome, it's mid. It's meh. It's right there. It's just below, several notches below awesome. And I love that they're talking about this because I love that that opens up that mid is not, we don't need to settle for mid, right? However, um, our parents the people that grew up with this, their parents are mid, right? They're mid, just the anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress is mid. It's not severe. It's not normal. It's not mild. It's just mid-level, but it's enough to make the parent emotionally unavailable, emotionally distant, emotionally inaccurate with the child. And so that when parents serve children as mirrors, and so as the child is mirroring the parent back, it's inaccurate, it's a little distorted, it's shut down, it's mid, right? And this is a problem, and it goes undiagnosed because it's not severe, right? And it's not mild enough to work through, to be able to just ignore it or be able to work past it. And so one of the challenges that happens here is that children grow up being numb because they're like, I can't decipher these feelings that I'm going through. I see this, it looks like this, it feels like this, it said this. Sometimes there's no language around these things, right? Parents are so preoccupied, they're not emotionally well enough to be connecting accurately with their emotions to be able to explain it to the child. That's really important for children. It's so much healthier to say I'm having an anxiety attack, and when the child comes and asks you, "Mom, what's going on?" and you say, "Well, I'm really anxious right now. I'm having an anxiety attack. I'm just gonna solution." Sit and I'm going to tap for a moment, or I'm going to deep breathe, and I should be good in a moment, as opposed to the child picking up that stuff and knowing something's wrong, going to the parent, and the parent doesn't respond, or the parent says, "Oh, I'm fine," and now we've got confusion because the child is getting "I'm fine" is being labeled to the stuff the child's picking up. It's confusing, right? And I'm not saying that you should go advertise your stuff, right? But I'm talking about a principle here. Children know what's going on, and when we don't name it accurately, it wires things inaccurately in the child, and when they get older, they don't know what to do with it, and it spins them in circles because these feelings of, now that I have the anxiety, it's labeled as fine in my brain, so I take no action. And then I do my things that work to suppress the anxiety feeling instead of doing something awesome with the anxiety, which we are meant to do something awesome with the anxiety. Anxiety is fear moving through the system, which is that energy is what brains use to make courage. right? We want to get that moving through the healing process, but instead, we're seeing fear as a threat and danger. And so we're going into a survival state about it. We're suppressing it. We're burying it back in our body. And then we wonder why we have body aches and illnesses in our body later, because the body's doing things it's not meant to do. It's not meant to hold all this stuff, right? And so then we have more of these other symptoms we don't like. And that's how this stuff spirals. This stuff in childhood is so important, but I don't want you to give you the impression that we can't work through it quickly, because we can resolve it at any time. We really can. Just because it didn't happen in childhood doesn't mean it can't happen now. This is what I've spent my time doing. People is turning it on now. But this is something that if you already have children, you get to turn it on now so that it automatically turns on to your children so they don't have to do this work. Right? That's really the fortunate part of this, is that brains resolve this stuff so quickly, so beautifully, and just with just a little bit of support. It's really at the end of the day, my job is super boring. It can be super boring. It's thrilling. I love it. I love watching all the electricity turn on in the brain and all of the movement happen. But supporting the brain is so simple. When you look at all these problems that I'm talking about that are so convoluted, and the solution is just provide the brain with this little bit of support. That's really all we're doing. And the brain resolves all this stuff. But I'm over here talking about it because people want to talk about it. But really, it's so much better just to dive in and heal and just do this, provide your brain the support. It'll resolve this stuff. And then you'll learn about it from the back end. However, these are symptoms when you feel like nothing too bad happened in childhood. This is what you're noticing. You feel numb, you feel disconnected, shut down. And there's also lots of suppression. So people feel suppressed. People will say this, I don't know how I feel. Because when parents are preoccupied with their past or their illness or their stressors, their finances, the situations going on without them, the parent's eyes are outward. And so the child learns to look outward. And then the child learns how to work with the parent to get their needs met. Children that have a good sense of self, it's because they had a caregiver who was looking at the child. And so when the parent or the caregiver is looking at the child learns to look at themselves, and they start seeing themselves accurately, and they start learning about themselves. And then the caregiver is also looking out and looking in at the child, looking out and looking in at the child, right? And that in at the child is where the child learns to connect with the self. That looking out at the world is where the child learns to look out at the world. And we want both. With mental illness and physical illness and poverty, financial illness, all these illnesses that we can have, parents tend to exclusively look out, or the balance is off. And so there's not enough looking in at the child to wire the child for the self. I have a lot of videos about this. Making room for the self. There's a video. There's tons of being selfish, selfishness and selflessness. There's a video on that. This self piece is really important for health and wellness. And so, but during this process in childhood, the child is learning to disconnect from themselves. Right? Children, when they're born, they're very self-wired. What I feel, what I need, my food, my diaper is wet. I need to go to the bathroom. I don't like this position. I need to burp. Like, that's all the child knows is the self. But because they're conditioned by this parent whose eyes are elsewhere, they're also learning to look elsewhere. They're not finding the self. So this is one of the problems here. And so the child doesn't know how they feel. And as adults, we have adults who don't know how they feel because the actual time and energy that should have been done in childhood didn't get done in childhood. And now the adult now doesn't know how they feel. And that is a massive problem on so many levels, because yourself is what you bring into your relationships. This is who you are. You show up with your children. Yourself is who you show up with in your marriage. You got married so that you could exchange selves, that you could interact with the selves. If you haven't found yourself yet and you're in a relationship, you're giving them something that is not yourself, and they know this. And even if it's almost yourself, that offness is enough to create dissatisfaction, and it lacks the connection and the vibrancy and the wellness that's needed to sustain and make relationships really satisfying and deeply connected. And all parties know this on some level. And so you'll find relationship marital distress, not horrible usually. It's just mid. It's significant enough relationship distress that there's not a lot of satisfaction, deep satisfaction here. um, these people who had this nothing too bad happened in my childhood and they have all these symptoms of complex PTSD, also they have more of a flat emotional affect. Their emotions are kind of flat. They're not too happy, they're not too sad, they're just in the middle. um, they're usually fantastic at intellectualizing. They understand a lot of the dynamics. They can explain a lot of the dynamics. And a lot of therapists um, who can't discern the difference between um, um, this trauma, this complex PTSD, and a securely attached and healthy person are going to think, oh, this person's so smart, I don't know how I can help them. You might have gone to a therapist and then they're saying, oh, I can't, it sounds like you understand what's going on, I don't think I can help you. Intellectualization is part of this problem. And they're smart, they're good, they can escape all sorts of therapists if you know what you're looking for. And this is really frustrating for people because they know something's wrong and they keep getting passed off and passed off and passed off. But this is the same. This is the same problem that people with overt trauma have. The processor isn't processing. And that's because there's pain in the system. All these times where your parent wasn't looking at you, looking away, is times their system wasn't syncing with yours and helping you process your pain. They've missed too many times of opportunities to be able to hold you and rock you or see what you were going through or say, oh gosh, I see that looks really hard for you. There's too many missed opportunities to do the nervous system processing dance. um, the nervous system to open this healing growth process. It's the same process brains use for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress, is the same process that the brain is using for growth and for maturation and mastery, right? We need to be mastering things in childhood to be able to complete developmental processes. And so we need to be mastering emotions during that time, mastering finding the self, mastering how do you feel. That stuff's not happening. So this person is experiencing a big delay in their developmental process, and it's showing up as an adult with these symptoms. And intellectualization is one of them, then that numbness. Um, and so they understand things, but there's only a superficial level of understanding. They can't get into the emotions. They don't know how they feel. They can't get into the emotional dynamics. They can't get into a lot of what's going on, the richer things in relationships or in experiences. And so they have a superficial experience and they can feel it. And a lot of times people aren't conscious of their awareness of this, but it's in there. And one of the things that will also start, I'm jumping everywhere. But one of the things we'll also see with that is we'll see their children with the same emotional setup. Their children are just in the middle. And this middle, if you're actually somebody in the middle, great. But usually we're not. We're usually on the spectrum somewhere. Some of us are we're all big and outgoing and some of us are very introverted and we're more calm and slow, right? And your brain has to do its work of finding your spot, right? Where you're at. And most of us are not mid. If we're in here, I'm checking you out. I'm checking you out. You're kind of mid everything, emotionally in the middle, mentally in the middle. You're kind of satisfied in the middle, not dissatisfied. A lot of this is like you don't even know what's possible because you're so out of touch with what is inside. I know what that's like. Uh, I absolutely know what that like, and it's intolerable to me. There's so much more here. There's so much more. This is how we open up satisfaction and fulfillment is right here. We get your brain accurate to you, and we actually need the emotions to do that. We need the emotions processing to do that. That's if your emotions aren't processing, your emotions are energy, and it's also information about you and life. And so if your emotions aren't processing, meaning there's a process your body is sending all this emotion, It's sensory material up through your brainstem, and it goes to the survival system, and that part of the brain can either kick it out or let it up. If it lets it up, it gets to go to your whole brain. And this part of your system gets to read all the emotional information, all the sensory information. And they get to make sense of it. They get to put words to it for the first time. They get to put solutions to it. They get to play around, pass it around, and they get to make this new programs for you, subconscious programming. A lot of brilliant things happen when the emotions get to move through the process. This is where you understand yourself deeply. It's in the emotions. And so, and the emotions is our power. If those emotions can't get through, because they're energy, right? If they can't get through, we can't use this part of our brain, the part that knows how to thrive, can't use the energy to make your life thriving. If this energy gets flagged by the survival system and we go into fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn, our symptoms show up right there. We're actually using all of our emotional energy for survival mode. No, and you'll watch that our children have the same patterns. So if you can't tell from yourself, I know you're watching your kiddos because you've learned how to do that and it's what you wanted as a child, so you're doing it. But you're going to watch these patterns. You see these patterns. It's you. It's not really your child. Your child's just learning from you, doing what children do. You resolve this in yourself. You get your emotions running. You get yourself unnumb. Numb is not nothing. Numb is tons of pain. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But you get yourself unnumb and you get your emotions moving through this part of your brain, and you're going to see insights, epiphanies, growth, mastery, development, maturation. You're going to see all this stuff, and then you're going to watch it in your kids 100% of the time. That's how it happens. Doesn't even matter if they're adult children, you're still going to see it. It's a little slower because adults there's more complexity. But if you've got children, it's almost an instant upload. I mean, you resolve something, you get more emotionally adaptive and flexible and healthy, and you'll see it show up in your children almost instantly. So fun. And so this is really, really important. Another symptom that people will have here is that they will be great at understanding others more than themselves, right? And that's because the eyes are looking outward, right? The eyes are out. Okay, some of the things that we're going to see in how the person behaves who has this nothing too bad happened to me in my childhood problem, and they've got all these symptoms of complex PTSD, is we're going to see passivity as a way of being, right? They're not usually aggressive, and they're not usually passive. Every once in a while they'd be passive aggressive. They're not really assertive because they're not going to assert what they want because they really don't know. So they don't have the information they need to be assertive, right? And that comes through the emotions, because it's not that they need to know, it's that their brain needs the data, needs to go through its process of knowing what we want, how we feel. The brain needs to go through this process. That's why most therapies don't work, is because your mind gets to go through the process, but your brain is not supported to go through the process of understanding who you are, what you want, what you feel, what you need. Do you see that difference? That's really, really important. And this is something people get tricked with all the time because our minds are so dang smart. But this is not a mind issue that we're having here. You don't have a mind problem. You have an emotional problem. And that's because your brain is struggling to get those emotions processed, because the positive emotions zip right through. Painful emotions flag your survival system and get sent back out over and over and again on repeat. And so you actually can't read that data. Your brain can't. Your mind can. It can be all up in all the business, but it doesn't matter what your mind knows if your mind body system, your brain, cannot get this stuff processed and integrated. So we're going to help with the negative emotions. We're going to provide specific brain support with the negative emotions. But that passivity is usually a big flag for these people. They're less in tune with themselves, right? They can't get the information processed that would help their brain get them. It's like their mind is blind of who they are. Their mind is, they can't see the stuff that doesn't get processed. That's how it always is. Whatever's not processed, your mind can't see. That doesn't mean it's not there. That means that it's unconscious. But we want to get that processed so that it gets to do the awesome thing your brain is going to do with it. Um, these people are usually not living fully, and that's what they'll say. They'll feel like there's more. There's more here. There's more. I just feel like there's more. Yes, you are right. There's more. There is so much more here. They feel like they're superficially engaging in life. Yes. They're more of the avoidant attachment style. They don't know that they're wanted, right? They don't, because parents spent their so much time out here. And that doesn't mean that their parent didn't want them. It means their parent was in this brain challenge of looking outward, looking at the past, looking all of that, maybe even trying to do the work of finding their self, right? And not succeeding, because if this brain process is up and running, this happens very quickly. If it's not up and running, you will look a whole lifetime and your brain cannot get that information processed. So but the parent didn't go to the child to make the connections often enough. Maybe there were some connections, but there just wasn't enough. There's some research that says we need to make that connection 30% of the time. More causes other issues and less causes other issues. We need to hit that 30%. I think that's kind of hard, right? But it's kind of awesome because you don't have to be a perfect parent, but there's parents that are missing, right? They're missing this, and we can be missing it at different times, right? But we want to make that connection with the child as often as we can. And I think that usually equals out. I mean, our best effort is probably going to be about 30%. Because the hardest part about this whole childhood being with children thing is being a parent. Is I was always like, I have 5 kids. And they're like, gosh, is that a lot? No, these children are perfect. What's hard is being a me. That's what's kicking my behind around. And it's like getting this whole process moving and well is really that work that we do for our kids, right? So, but we want to do that so that we're available to connect with the children. If your parent's not connecting with you, you learn that connection's not available, and you're just avoiding it. And it's not even that you're avoiding it, you just don't even know it's there, so you're not looking for it. It's like people that are colorblind. There are certain colors they're not looking for because they've never really seen it before, so they're not looking for it. Once the parent starts to make that connection with the child and they do it enough time, the child's looking for it in themselves and they're looking for it in other people, and that is really a more securely attached child, unless it's overdone, and then, right, we're not talking about that in this video. Okay, and then the other symptom we're going to see is that all the relationships are mid. All the relationships are just in the middle of the ground. They're not awesome. They're not terrible. They're just, And people are usually like, something's missing. I don't quite know what. And they will have a pretty incredible, noticeable to me and to others, emotional poverty. I will test this by asking, how did you feel about that? A simple question, right? And somebody who has some emotional awareness and connection is going to say, oh, I felt this, 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 and this. A lot of times these people will switch over to what they think about it, right? And that emotional information isn't available. They're not trying to do this. This is just how the wiring is. And so then we're working on finding the emotions, right? And there's a process for this. And it's not just, oh, you need to be aware of your emotions. Okay. But how, right? And walk me through that, right? This is what I want to see starting to happen in therapy sessions with therapists, that we're not just saying, oh, you need to go within. No, let me guide you within and show you what you're doing. And then you're going to get some homework so that you do this too. And then you come back and you get better. And then I will show you how to do it more. And we are going to get this all the way turned on for you. That's what I want to see happening. And that's absolutely essential and vital to my process, because otherwise you leave and you're like, oh, I guess I should go within. Wasting time. Or you're with me and you feel, and I'm doing it with you. I'm doing the emotional walk in, and I'm showing you how to do it. But then you don't build the skill yourself, so you're dependent upon me. No, I want you and your system being beautifully synergistic on this so that you can meet so many of your emotional needs. We're not all going to meet all of them, right? But the more we do, the more we have opportunities for interdependence. The less we can do, the more we can't, we're not independent in our emotions, the more codependence we're going to have. We're dependent on others for our emotions and our emotional connections. And so now we're codependent, right? We want to shift that, and we shift that with you. You know, a lot of this codependency work has to do with setting boundaries and all this stuff. This process opening up your brain is going to show you all the boundaries. You're going to know how to meet your own emotional needs, and you're going to know how to keep yourself in interdependent relationships as opposed to codependent ones. A lot of this stuff, if we just do the brain work, everything works. This is really important for our relationship with our children because our emotional wellness is basically the glass ceiling for our children. I'm just gonna show you like this. If you imagine yourself, this is your emotional ability. Your children go in here, and this is what they can do with you. Right? That little thing that they can do with you. If your emotions are this big, this is what they can do with you emotionally. So they're not, if your emotions are super small, they're not getting a broad experience of their emotions. They're not getting to, and if this is you, their entire childhood and teenage years, they're going to feel very restricted with you. And then they're going to go out with other adults that have a bigger capacity, and they're going to have a great time. They're going to come back with you, and they're going to be small. And then they're going to go out before we knew how to work with the brain and we knew we could not get this open, I would say, awesome. You know, let these other adults help out. But this is biologically not how it's supposed to be. And this is unsatisfying to you. This causes all kinds of distress, jealousy, envy. I mean, and your system should be reporting about that. But really, if we sit in here and we build your emotional capacity to hear, your children are going to feel this instantly. Your children are going to feel like, oh my gosh, the refreshingness, right? And then, you know, and they're going to tell you, I need more, mom, because they're going to bounce against the walls. They always do. Or dad, you know, they do this to dad too. And the next thing you know, if you know what to do, you're going to expand. And I want you to know what to do. This is your emotional world. This is your inner world. And this is how you create your outer world. This is a powerful place to master. And this is a huge gift you give your children, to have this much emotional ability. I can't tell you how many clients I have that their parent is so rigid, even in adulthood, and now they're at the point where they're going to pass, and it's just like the child can feel, the adult child at this point can feel that when the parent passes, they're just going to have all this freedom now, right? I don't want that for you. I want you to be growing and adaptive and keeping up with your family, right? And I want them to know that all they have to do is come ask you for more growth, and you're going to do it. Because of course we're growing here. We're growing in our capacity. We're growing. And the emotions always have the information of the growth within them. That's why we want to get them processed. Okay. I said a lot of stuff. And thank you for listening to me say a lot of stuff, because this was my first time really going here. And I typically don't talk about this. I have never talked about this. It's hard to, I have believed that it's hard to explain emotions to people that have not experienced emotions, right? It's harder to explain symptoms to people who are not aware of their symptoms, right? I typically in the past have taken a stance where when you come to awareness, then these videos are gonna be really helpful to you, right? But I think this is now it's time for words. And so round one is usually all over the place for me. But I love doing this, and I love practicing with you. I love sharing these thoughts. If you have better ways of saying anything that I shared, put it in the comments. Absolutely. I love that stuff. I love to nerd with people. And yeah, let's do it. So if you have insights that you're sharing from here, put it in here. If you followed me all the way around and you got a nugget, I'd love to hear about this. And and just see what you think and what you feel. I want to go back to my piece in this and just doing the brain work. If you're like, Rachel, I don't even know what you said, but I am interested in doing the brain work. Yes. You are speaking my language. I have a free program where I share my interventions, my favorite 3 interventions where for this work that I have found work the best for helping people recover from complex PTSD, even when nothing too bad happened in their childhood. And so these interventions help the brain unblock that healing process, and you will feel them. You will feel your body. You will feel your brain do this work. You will notice your thoughts being different. You will notice your body feeling different. You will notice symptoms reducing, releasing entirely. You will notice lots of things. They take only 30 seconds to do or 2 minutes. I have a couple in there. And you'll notice a before and after. If you don't, it's not the intervention for you, throw it out. We're playing to win here. And when this nervous system process gets unblocked and open, change happens instantly. So I want you to see that. I invite you to try out that video. I mean, okay, let me say that again. I invite you, all the beeps are happening now because it's 10. Okay. But I invite you to enroll in that free program, try these interventions, see what you notice. If you get one that works, you are ready to do quite a bit of healing work. If you get 2 that works, awesome. Usually all 3 people notice results with all 3, but every once in a while someone's just like, I just don't like that intervention, or I got nothing. Great. Throw those out, grab the one that does. And that's the one that you can really use to unblock and do this process and do a ton of healing, resolve symptoms, get that emotional intelligence running and operating and serving you, get that all those emotions processed, and really let your brain do the work of helping you thrive and creating your life of thriving and connection and vibrancy. So I also have a program called Inner World Transformation where I walk you through my process for resolving complex PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And I walk all my therapy clients through it, all my coaching clients through it. I also have one-on-one coaching services and small group work. So you can find all of that on my website. Also, it's in the description below. And then my last request is that you like this, follow it, subscribe to my channel. I'm on YouTube. You might find this video on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe and share it. Share this with your friends. Share any of my videos, and I'll see you all another time. Take care.